Today I decided to do a voiceover for my journal page. A few people have requested that. I'm working in my Strathmore visual journal, and the first thing I'm doing is laying down a light wash of teal fluid acrylic paint by Golden. And then I'm going to wipe back some parts of it with baby wipe just to create a little bit of texture in there. At this stage I'm not too sure where the page is going, so I'm just following my instinct really. I've added some splatters of the same colour paint, and again just wiping back some of those, it creates a little more texture and interest. These are Silks acrylic glazes. The first one is teal zircon, which is almost the same shade as the fluid acrylic that I put down to begin with, but it does have the mica in to create shimmer. And the second colour is African Jade, which is a more transparent colour, but it's more blue toned, so it's adding a small amount of depth to the page. And there you can see the shimmer of the mica coming through. Next I'm using a background stamp, again to add some interest to the page. If you've watched my journal pages before, I tend to use a lot of rubber stamps to create some depth and interest. And I'm using archival ink because it is waterproof, and the manganese blue is one of my favourite shades of blue. It goes pretty well with the teal. This is another shade of the silks. They tend to have different levels of transparency, and you can definitely build them up to be more opaque. So that was the Pretty Peridot, and this is a text stamp. Also using archival ink. This is one of the new colours, the leaf green, and the circles are Spellbinders die cuts. Then I'm adding some of the African Jade again, because these circles are going to be elements on the journal page, and I don't want them to stand out too much, so this will help integrate them into the background that's been prepared for them. This is a Prima stencil from the Donna Downey line, and I'm just adding some blue painter's tape to secure the stencil and to mask it off. So it's just revealing the parts that I want, which are the poppies at the top, and I'm using Liquitex like moulding paste so that the poppies are textured, and it adds a little bit of dimension. This here is Lumiere paint this time, because it is more opaque than the silks, although as I said you can build the silks up and create the opacity that you want, but this was the shade of red that I was wanting, that I felt went best with everything else. So I do actually end up putting two coats of this paint on there. I didn't feel it necessary to record both layers for the camera. And there are the finished pieces, all using the same section of that Donna Downey stencil. I'm just finishing the stems here with olivine silks paint, which, as you can see, I'm building it up so it's quite opaque, and it's a darker green than the background silks, which was the Pretty Peridot, so it's not getting too lost. Now I'm edging the pieces with the manganese blue archival ink, and the combination of the green underneath is changing the colour somewhat to a more teal, which fits in quite nicely with the page. You'll notice the edges of the poppies at the top and get some of the ink on them, but I actually quite like that effect, and I went back later and added a little more to the other poppies and to the base of the poppies also. Now I'm using a soft gel medium, again by Golden. You can use any adhesive of your choice to attach the circular elements to the page. And this is olivine with just a piece of sequin mesh, just to start the process of integrating those elements so that they're not standalone pieces and they actually look part of the page. So I start off with the olivine, quite dark in some places, and then with the last few pieces of sequin mesh that I'm adding, I do them quite lightly, so you've got that gradation of colour. And this is also fluid acrylic, this time titanium white. Going over some of the olivine just so it softens the edges and adds to that process of starting to integrate the pieces there. You'll notice on the poppies, I've gone over the poppies in places as well. I'm not too worried about that at this stage. This here is a Neo colour, which is a water-soluble wax pastel by Caran d'Ache. These are quite useful because you can use them as they are, or you can, as you'll see, you can blend them with any kind of liquid medium. They are watercolours, so obviously they're going to blend with water, but in this instance I'm using a baby wipe just to melt the colour into the page. I tend to use it in 2 stages, so to begin with just sort of melt it quite a lot into the page, and then I tend to go back and add a second layer of colour. So here you can see I'm actually going over the poppies again with the Lumiere paint in the crimson, just so that they stand out a little more. That red's a little bit more defined, where the sequin mesh I felt was too intense over the top of them in places, but I'm not completely obliterating the layers that have gone onto the top. And then just to integrate the red and use that in a different section of the page, I'm adding some splatters of paint in the same crimson red. And here I'm stamping out my text. This is a alphabet set by Tracy Bunkers. Now I've switched from archival to VersaFine. I like the colour of the VersaFine is very jet black, much more so than the archival ink. However, you cannot use VersaFine over acrylics. So anything that goes over acrylics, I use the archival, and because this is just straight onto paper, I can use the VersaFine and get a much crisper, more jet black image. So I'm just cutting the pieces up now, and again using the soft gel medium to adhere them down. That alphabet set actually comes in 2 different sizes. You can buy it from Tracy Bunkers on Etsy, which is where I got mine. This is the smaller of the 2 sizes, and it's quite a useful set because, as you'll see later in the page, you can add some colour to it. And this is the first stage of integrating these elements. I'm using the African Jade Silks paint, which is a very transparent glaze even for the silk, so it's not going to completely obliterate those letters. And then I'm just adding also some of the green. This is the Pretty Peridot, so it's not quite as dark as the olivine, but a very similar shade. Again using the Caran d'Ache Neo colour. I'm not sure if I mentioned the colour is ice blue. And again, just blending that with a baby wipe. For this purpose, if you've got a baby wipe that's maybe been left out a little while, it's not quite as juicy, you get a better result because it doesn't take quite as much of the colour away. So back to the crimson Lumiere paint and just filling in those letters, adding a little bit of colour to them. So once again, it's adding the red that's in the poppies to another area on the page and making it look more integrated. and part of one piece rather than several elements that have just been stuck down. So that's the last part finished. And then because the text does get a little bit lost with some layers of glaze, I like to go over it with a Posca paint pen. You can use any black pen of your choice. This is one that I go to quite a lot. I really like how intense the black is. It's very fast drying and it will go over most surfaces. And this is the finest point that they have. It's not as fine as it could be, and you tend to find that the paint pens don't have those very fine tips, so it probably wouldn't be a good pen for extremely fine detail, but it's okay for this application. This is a stamp set by 7 Gypsies, and this is one of the final elements of the page. The stamp set is called Disclaimer, and then I wanted to put that particular element of the page into brackets, so I went for a Paper Artsy set to take the brackets from, and I do go over that text with the Posca pen that isn't recorded. Just adding some more splatters, this time with the black, so that the black lettering is taken to different areas of the page. And that is just about it. The wording on the page was chosen from the lyrics of a song, and it refers to a place of hope and perfection. And the reason I added the additional text in the brackets at the bottom of the page was to suggest that such a place is something that you'd need to work on and assemble in some way. It's not necessarily an automatic aspect of life. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the voiceover. It's not something I'll do for every video, but if I feel a page needs perhaps a little bit more explanation, then I will go ahead and do that. So thank you for watching and commenting and rating.